So I love running like long form campaigns. I love the Ancient Relics and Hokey Religions game that we've been playing on Sundays. But there is just nothing like a great one shot, you know?
I mean, one shot's good, but you're not going to feel that. You need at least three, right? Or something, depending on how good you are with your liquor. I don't know. Just saying.
This week on J&J Tabletop, we're talking about one shots.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Jake from JNJtabletop, and with me, as always, is Josh. Sometimes people call us the Tabletop Brothers. Usually that's hidden nerdy side. Actually, you should go check out his channel. He's really cool. But we actually heard from Lazok that he was interested in learning about some of the differences and similarities between one-shots and full-length campaigns. So although some of them are going to be a little obvious, like obviously a campaign is going to be longer than a one-shot, we figured we'd do a video on one-shots and just go from there and see how Josh approaches that. He actually normally does the one-shots for our group. He was like the emergency, like, oh, the DM doesn't have anything prepared. So Josh would come and snap his fingers and all of a sudden have something ready to go. So Josh, when you're sitting around the table and it's becoming very obvious that either the DM doesn't have something or, maybe you're thinking of doing like a holiday one shot or something like that, it's becoming obvious this is what's going to happen and you're the dungeon master. What's your process? How do you go about like preparing for a one shot and, getting that going?
Well, I mean, if I'm sitting at the table and the DM doesn't have anything prepared, then I'm kind of just stuck with whatever gets thrown at me, and yeah, I can usually make that work. But that'll turn into silliness, but fun silliness. If it's actually like a planned one shot, one of those that I keep in the giant folder on my phone that I've had for years of just one shots.
That's awesome.
But if it's something that I'm planning, I usually start with like some sort of theme, right? So it's the holiday season right now, and really just these past few months in general, there's all sorts of holiday one shots that happen, whether it's like Christmas themed one shots, or if you go back a couple months, maybe it's like a Halloween themed one shot. So that kind of will determine, I mean, it doesn't have to be an event like that, but something in that area will kind of determine where you're going to go. If you're not talking about like a holiday or some sort of special event, maybe you're thinking like murder mystery, or maybe you're thinking horror, or you're basically deciding the genre of your little short film.
I could easily see trying to base things off of like one of your favorite movies. Obviously a holiday movie would fit for something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it gives you a little framework.
Yeah, holiday season, maybe you're doing like How the Grinch Stole Christmas, or
yeah, that was one of my favorites.
Yeah, or maybe you're doing like an upside down dungeon crawl, and it's like Die Hard, and you're at the top of this building, you're trying to get to the bottom floor.
I mean, yeah, the only problem with that is Die Hard is not a Christmas movie, so that's like the non-holiday one shot.
All right, we'll talk about that another time.
Let us know in the comment section what you think. So you're going to do a one shot, whatever theme you have. I mean, the players have to know what level they're going to make their characters. So do you have any thoughts on starting level?
So there's a lot of little things that'll go into that. One is obviously going to be like time constraints. So if you're doing something like the way we usually have to game nowadays, and really the way a lot of gaming has been in like 2020, where it's over Discord or some sort of video chat, most of the time those games are a little shorter. So when we're playing like 3-4 hour tops games, you don't have a ton of time. You don't have as much time as you would in that like 6 hour, or even like some crazy people with the 12 hour, like I set aside my entire day, this is all we're doing today. But if you're playing a short game, I wouldn't advise starting at like level 20. I would say, well, let's take it down a notch. You could do level 1. I think 3 and 5 is a good sweet spot. But the other thing that you have to think about would be like player level and also DM skill level. Because the same is true, if a player is not as familiar with the game, throwing them into like a 15th level character and just saying, hey, yeah, you're going to play 15th or 17th level character. You already have your capstone abilities and this, that, and the other thing. And I need this character ready by next week. And whatever, we'll do things like.
Yeah.
You're gonna stress out a player like
I want to choose
crazy.
Wish. How does that work? Can you explain that? Like,
Yeah, and
okay,
that would bring me to like my next thing. I would say is complications, man.
yes.
When you bring like crazy high level characters into the mix, more money, more problems, right?
Yeah, that's really good. The more you have to handle and to plan out, the weirder it can get. And maybe weird's fun, but
The first DM or the first session I ever DM'd was kind of like an in-between session one-shot thing. We were playing with me, you, Blake, Matt, and Nooch. We were level 4, and that was my first time DMing. I was like that was the perfect spot for me. If you guys had been twice that level even, or 3 times that level, that would have been such a difficulty for me. So definitely when you're thinking about starting level, think about how much time you have, think about what you can handle and what your players can handle.
all right. So now, if you have the level determined and you at least have a theme for your game, how are you going to start off? I mean, you know, are you just doing the, hey, we're all just kind of hanging out in a tavern and just kind of see what happens? I mean, like, what's your process there?
The way I see it, you don't have time for that in a one shot. So in a one shot, you need to start off in the middle of the action. In a campaign, a long form campaign where you have plenty of time for the story to kind of reveal itself and kind of just happen naturally, in a one shot, you need to have that story prepared already, and you need to just kind of thrust it upon the players. Whether maybe they are in that bar and you give them a couple minutes to describe what their characters are doing, whether they're having a bar fight, an arm wrestle, darts, or maybe they're just sulking. You know, maybe they're one of those. Um, watch out how to make a good character video.
Yeah.
But you could give them a couple minutes to take care of that, and then boom, like have a flame pop up in the middle of the bar, and you know, suddenly you're called out. All of your characters are called out, and they need to go do something, or just something that the characters that they have made, they couldn't possibly ignore it. That's the kind of strong start that you need.
Yeah.
And it could be that, or it could be like you guys are outside of the dungeon, or you're in the middle of the woods, you're looking for the blacksmith's daughter. Like, you know, you could already give them the quest and already let them know the goal that they have. If you did that in a long form campaign, maybe it'd be railroading, but in a one shot, it kind of just makes things easier for everyone.
Yeah, I think I've thought about doing a metagaming is good video, and there are times where railroading and like Josh said, watch that how to make a great D&D character, because you have to have adventures that will bite the hook, and right here you're basically saying, yeah, you already bit the hook, okay? Even just our very first video we recorded was actually the only one shot I actually ever DM'd for, but I just put Josh in a situation where his character really had to find out what happened to his the rest of his squad. There's no way he would not try and find out what happened to them. Okay, so when you're going to do this one shot, what does your preparation look like?
You need to know your target time, right? We kind of mentioned that briefly before, but that's very important for a one shot, very important for pacing, for everything about it. You need to know how much time you have, and you need to set realistic goals for what you can do in that time. This is just DMing 101. I'll just throw this out there right there. If you think something is going to take like 10 minutes, maybe you're like, I think my players will take 10 minutes to do this thing. It could easily take them 45. And then there are also moments where like you might think something's going to take forever, and they might not engage with it at all and move on. So you kind of have to be wary of that. I'd say the biggest thing to worry, it doesn't matter if you end early for a one shot, but you definitely don't want to go over your time. We'll just keep going with the holiday moment. You know, this is your time. Everyone is in town for the holiday, or everyone has a day off and they're able to get on that video chat or whatever it looks like. This is your only day to do it. So you need to get it done. From there, I'd say make some NPCs. NPCs is one of my favorite things to do for anything, for any sort of campaign making. We decide the plot, right? I decide what kind of story we're doing, and that goes along with the theme, which we talked about in the beginning. And after that, you have to make some characters in there. So of course you have quest giver, right? Everyone's favorite NPC.
I mean, this person actually, I think, could even be off camera, right? So like maybe like he gave the quest or she gave the quest to one of the players, and the players sort of is like the quest giver, but it's just like, yes, you've been hired to, save my snail that I lost. I don't know why I chose snail, but you could be anything simple like that.
Yeah, no, and that's perfect. That's why like the quest giver doesn't necessarily have to be like the wizard that meets you in the tavern or whatever. They could be your benefactor, right? Like you, if we go back to the blacksmith's daughter example from before, okay, you are in the woods, you're already there, but you know that your benefactor, the person who sent you on this quest, maybe it's the lord of the land because his blacksmith is too distraught and he can't create weapons or whatever. And you could create all sorts of reasons for why, but you have some sort of person who you're answering to, some sort of reason for adventuring. And the next one could be the villain. What's a story without a good villain? Right? Every story has a good villain, or at least an antagonist.
They're pretty much the most important character in any story.
Yeah, villains are going to enhance the heroes in any story, and in D&D, that means a good villain is going to enhance the party because they are the heroes in your story. Unless it's an evil campaign, in which case I guess they're the villains. I don't want to think about how that works.
Yeah, but then the good player, a good NPC would be the antagonist getting in the way of your plans.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
Antagonize, that's the root word.
And something like this, it's fun. It's really fun in your long campaigns to have these complicated villains that have all these crazy goals and plans within plans within plans within plans for all our Dune fans out there. But sometimes that sort of depth and that sort of that complication, we'll use that word again, sometimes having that much in there, it could be a lot for a one shot. Personally, I think that is best played out in a long form campaign where your villain is able to do bad things and then you're able to discover good reasons for those bad things, something along those lines over time. In a one shot, it's just kind of too much to throw at your players in a short period of time, in my opinion.
Yeah, you want to keep it simple. I feel like that's probably a very good common thread throughout this entire video would be keep things simple, straightforward. I actually just saw the Stranger Things one shot with Chris Perkins as the DM, and he had one person or creature that it gave the party a significant choice as to what they would do with this creature, and maybe it could just be like a fork in the road, or maybe of course it's D&D, players choose what's behind door number 3, but just maybe like one key point that might either help or just round something out in a way that might make them feel like they had a little extra impact on the story. Like maybe you're not sure if this NPC is a good guy or a bad guy. I think that could be a fun little, just one little decision point that can let them do their thing.
Anytime you start to give your players more agency, or even just little choices, or give them someone to say, do you trust this person, do you not trust this person, with like just some little tidbit, any little moment like that is going to stick out and be important, and it gives players something to really think about. And it's instead of just like, all right, we're just running through this must speed run of D&D. For NPCs, like those are the main ones. Maybe depending on what kind of one shot you're doing, you might need or might want to have some sort of red herring in there. If it's like a murder mystery, right? That's you. Honestly, if it's a murder mystery, you need them. You need to have.
Yeah, I was going to say that's really important.
Yeah. But it's always fun to have like some sort of little twists in there. Those are the important ones, but you're always going to need the barkeep and the little town crier and whoever else NPCs. But those ones you don't have to think about as much.
What do you think about putting puzzles in your one shot? Because I know depending on depending on the group you're working with and or how complicated the puzzle is, that could be time consuming. So do you like putting puzzles in there? And if so, how do you go about that?
I'm a big fan of putting puzzles in there. And puzzles don't necessarily even have to be a puzzle. A puzzle could be the red herring, right? If you look at it as such, it's kind of similar. Puzzle is really something that is just instead of like combat or any sort of skill challenge or anything like that, a puzzle is something that breaks all the rolls up, right? That all of the dice rolls up and makes your party and your players have to actually think with their heads for a little bit. Some players love that. Some players hate it. I find that most tables at least have one player who enjoys it. So it's nice to throw it in there. Looking at you, Evan. I also like puzzles, but this goes along with you might think it's going to take them 10 minutes, but it will take them 45 minutes. You need to be really careful when you're playing a one-shot. You can't let things bog you down. If you give them a puzzle and they're just not getting it, it's not making sense to them, they're getting frustrated, like they're just as stressed, in some cases, they're just as stressed about finishing in time as you are. So you need to make sure that you have some extra hints there. You know, if you want to give them some obvious hints, that's fine. Don't start off with those. Start off with just whatever hint you have planned. Another way you could do that, it's not going to work with every puzzle, but some puzzles are just straight up designed so that they might not necessarily have an answer or have a planned answer. But you let your party start doing their thing, they start making decisions, they start trying things, and you hear something they tried and you said, yeah, I like that. That's the answer. Don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, I've heard you plan situations, not solutions.
Mm-hmm.
That can be dangerous in a one shot, but like Josh said, if they're not getting it, have a couple of plans in mind to be able to maybe, as Skelly would say, spoon feed them. What do you think about having a magic item? Like maybe does everybody start with a magic item? Do they find a magic item? How do you go about things like that?
I love throwing a carrot on a stick in there somewhere, you know. And again, this goes along. A lot of people see one shots as just very linear, and they can be, and sometimes they might have to be a little bit of a railroad to an extent. But to throw little things in there to break it apart, right? Like when your players are clear on their goal, they're like, I need to go run and do this thing, and then you throw something shiny on the side, and they're like, oh.
Players love their loot, Josh.
They love their loot.
That's the way it is.
The bards especially, but
I'm very proud right now.
Thank you. But yeah, players love their loot. If you want your players to get excited, throw in some sort of magic item, and especially, again, it's kind of depends on what kind of one shot you're doing, but if you're gonna have them fight some sort of big boss at the end, give them some sort of magic item, or at least the opportunity to find some sort of item that the boss is weak to, right? And this is going to help you in a couple different ways. One, it's going to give them something to be really excited about, to find, oh, I found this thing. You know, they get to have that Zelda, like, you know,
yes,
like that
absolutely.
Kind of thing.
Every level had its magic item that you had to find, as well as the boss to get. I like that. I like that a lot.
But it's going to help you in that way where you're getting players excited. But the other thing that it's going to help you with is if you're running short on time and the player now has something that's going to make that boss fight a little bit faster, you just bought yourself some time. So those are two really nice pros for including magic items, I would say.
Which leads in really well, I think, to our next point, because one of the three pillars of D&D is combat, and some encounters can be very time consuming as well, depending on, you know, we talked about it before, player experience, DM experience, how high and powerful each the monsters or players are. What's your approach to that as far as how many encounters to place in your one shot?
Again, depends on time length. I'm gonna say like 3 to 6 hour session, maybe 3 to 5 hour session, we'll say, is like the average. Probably between 2 and 3 encounters, and one of them I think is it's nice to throw a little combat encounter of them that they could just kind of steamroll over in the beginning. And one of the reasons that you might want to do this is, one, it's just an easy thing to add in there. A lot of players are just really hungry for combat. And two, most likely, if you're doing a one shot, it's the first time that your players are playing these characters, and it's the first time they're playing those characters together. So you give them something little that they're able to kind of do with just maybe not a ton of risk, or maybe there is a ton of risk. That's up to you. But you give them something little to get their feet a little bit wet and learn their character, and then they might be a little bit more comfortable as you go on through. So I think it's nice to have like one sort of easy or medium encounter. I mean, I love ending a one shot with some sort of boss battle at the end, right? With some sort of difficult.
You'd feel like that's how it has to go, right?
Yeah. So I think 2 is a very good amount. Sometimes 3, if you're playing for a very long time, maybe you could add even more than that. But personally, even in just like a regular session, I don't really like more than 2 or 3 combats in general. And I love combat, but I think 2 or 3 is the sweet spot.
If say you're running your one shot, right? You're the dungeon master. You're doing all these things, and maybe your players took longer on that gimme encounter that you thought might just be simpler, or they're just really exploring something that you just did not think they would be interested in, or they're just taking a long time in their puzzle. It feels like you have to have a plan for that, because if, like you said, maybe they only have 3 hours, maybe they only have 4 hours because they're in town for the holidays or whatever the case may be. I feel like you got to be able to cut something or rearrange something. I know there's probably many ways you could go about doing that, but
I would highly suggest, don't be afraid to cut anything out. What you have written on that notebook, on post-its, behind that DM screen, anywhere, that's for you. That's not for the players, right? So if there's something that you're really, really excited about, maybe don't cut that out, but still don't even be afraid to cut that out, because you could always reuse things, right?
yeah.
So as you start getting to that point of like, all right, we're really getting to that time crunch, like I'm not sure if we're gonna make it to the end. Okay, well, get rid of that puzzle, or make the puzzle, make them find the really obvious hint right off the bat for the puzzle.
I've actually, for encounter shortening tips, I know you can lower hit points on enemies. You could have them deal a little more damage to trying to compensate that, to keep the difficulty level the same. Maybe you could remove a combatant or 2 from the encounter. Like if you have a boss with like 6 minions, maybe it's a boss with 3 minions. Whatever you might have in mind. That could be a nice little way to try and still achieve what you were trying to with it, but yet still shorten things up. I've seen Matt do that. He said he'll just lower the hit points and make him deal more damage. With low levels, sometimes that's dangerous, but in a one shot, if a character dies, it's okay. Like, it's a one shot.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? They're gonna remember the characters, or they're gonna remember the villains that hit them really hard and scared them, more than they're gonna remember the bullet sponge or just the tank. So
yes, that is don't make a barbarian villain with resistance to all of the things and the stuff. No. But that's a good point, right? Like if it looks like someone's about to just get killed because they got someone else next to them got one shot, or dropped to like 3 hit points in one shot, a little sense of urgency is going to kick in, and you're going to create that tension that always is so sweet in a nice combat encounter. You come to the end. It seems like you're either at the boss fight or you finish the boss fight. How do you wrap it up?
Give them something exciting, right? Whether there's some sort of time crunch, if there's a boss fight, like, oh, they're trying to do this thing, you need to stop them, you need to do this now. Okay, well, all right, you did the thing, you were able to stop them from ruining Christmas, or
saved Whoville, Josh.
You saved Whoville. Well, yeah, hey, we did that once.
We did that one, yes.
But
poor Cindy Lou.
You just whatever you do, this is a one shot. So you might want to give them some sort of moment where they're able to get like closure at the end, right? So if we're talking about our crazy Christmas one shot that I did a few years back, after you guys fought the Grinch, you got your 39.5 foot pole.
So ridiculous and awesome.
You fought Jack Frost Giant. Well, after that, you all were able to wind down, drink some hot cider, drink some hot cocoa, and Santa gave you each a present, gave you each a gift, right? It was the end. You saved the day, you saved Christmas. But I also did something on purpose. I gave you all a really cool item that you never really had a chance to use, right? Maybe it was overpowered, maybe not, but you all got something interesting. And that might make you take this character that you made for a one shot and expect it to never pick up again. That might make you say to me 2 weeks, 2 months, a year down the road, say, hey, could we do something with those characters again? And then that turns your one shot, you're just one off into the gift that keeps on giving, and you can do something again with that crazy story that you wrote.
It's almost like you're leaving the door open just a little bit, because maybe your group only meets once a year and this is what you can do, and maybe it just becomes a tradition. And it could be fun to just have these ridiculous characters travel together and grow together on these silly, wacky adventures. I like that. That's a lot of fun. It feels like with a one shot, don't be afraid to lean into the cliche. Let it be cheesy, let it be silly, let it be fun.
What you just said is one of my favorite parts of a one shot, especially nowadays when a lot of our sessions are like recorded. Like for us, players, including myself, will overthink everything, or even if you don't record your games and you're just like very focused on like, this is my character, this is how I want to build my character's story, and like whatever, any little thing you do in a campaign arc. I remember I made a decision with Marcus that I was like, I don't think Marcus would have done that. And like, afterwards I was like, why did, I probably shouldn't have done that. I wonder how that's going to affect the future or whatever. Playing a one shot takes all of that weight off, and you just have the freedom to just do whatever you want, make whatever choice you want. Throw your character into danger, make your character say that crazy thing or say that really serious thing. It's not going to have as much repercussions for like future sessions as like in a regular campaign. I think it's easier to not overthink it for a one shot.
So why do you think Die Hard's a Christmas movie? It is an action movie that came out in the summer, and it just happens to be set at Christmas. Like, there's no Christmas spirit. There's no Christmas spirit. It's not a Christmas movie.
It's 100% a Christmas movie. Have you ever seen any Christmas movie ever? First off, yes, you're right. It takes place during Christmas. Also takes place during a Christmas party. But the entire point of the movie is it is a man trying to get to his family for Christmas. If Die Hard is not a Christmas movie, then Jingle All the Way is also not a Christmas movie. There are equal amounts of Christmas in both movies, and the plot is the same. They're both a man, both action movie stars,
This is just
trying
ridiculous.
to get home to their family for Christmas.
No.
And trying to get some other things done in between.
Yeah, they didn't call it Jingle All the Way Die Hard. It was, yeah, whatever. I think Kim needs me to go kill a spider. I'll be right back.